We're joined by the great Tim Watts of BamaOnline. And Tim, Georgia's announced a starting quarterback. It's Carson Beck. That leaves Ohio State and Alabama as the two superpowers that have not announced a starting quarterback yet. I don't think we're going to get a Nick Saban announcement of a quarterback, but I am curious, is there any separation? Is it any closer, or after this last scrimmage on Saturday, is it still kind of anybody's ball game?
I think Nick Saban and Tommy Rees have a feel for how this is going to shake out in the first game. I don't believe they're a few weeks from kickoff and don't have any inkling. I mean, you have to see Jalen run out there with the first team. He's got the most experience. He's got the most game experience. He's older, been in the system longer. I think he's going to get a first look. If you look at Nick Saban's history, that's kind of been his MO before. We've seen it with Blake Barnett, Jalen Hurts, Phillip Sims, A.J. McCarron. You see guys sort of, throw them out there and let them fend for themselves, see who's going to react. Because the truth is you really don't know how they're going to react under the lights. It could be a little bit different. Again, we saw that with Blake Barnett, who had beat out Jalen. They felt more comfortable with him, but, kind of froze up the minute he got on the field, and moment was too big for him. So I think Jalen right now, and it's kind of what we expected. We talked about it last time. Jalen probably has – somebody's got to take it from Jalen, in my opinion. There's still a few weeks to go, but I think Alabama kind of knows how this is going to play out.
Well, and it's interesting because we talked to Greg McElroy last week, and he broke down Jalen and Ty Simpson and Tyler Buckner. I did not slip in a Dylan Lonergan question, but you and I had talked about Dylan last time you were on, and Dylan was the subject of the message boards last week. It was crazy.
Dylan was the most popular person in recent memory. He was out discussed 10 or 15 to 1 over Jalen and Ty and everybody last week. It was one thread after the other. Again, I know you're a huge fan. Travis Reier, who I work with, is a massive fan. Shannon Terry loves the guy. I mean, all you guys, you love him.
I feel like we're his personal PR team.
I think Nick Saban's listening.
I was going to say, Nick Saban said some very nice things on Saturday when he got asked about him.
Hey, that's a lot of praise for a true freshman. It's kind of weird because he was kind of an afterthought. Eli Holstein had committed. Nobody really was talking about Dylan. He's more of a baseball player. Everybody thought he was going to South Carolina, and Alabama wasn't going to take a second quarterback. So to see him this week, I mean, he was a very popular young man right now.
And so do they have the clarity doesn't really come necessarily from the scrimmage. Sounds like they kind of know where they're going. But what do you think happens Middle Tennessee State game? Because we've seen this before with Alabama, where they'll trot out some guys and maybe a couple guys will play, or like 2015 or 16 against USC, Blake Barnett starts. They know they're putting Jalen Hurts in, and then they're pretty sure Jalen Hurts isn't coming out.
Yeah. I think with Middle Tennessee, I think you're going to see a couple of guys play at least. You can't go into Texas not knowing. I mean, Middle Tennessee will be a test, but it's not going to be the test that you're preparing for. I mean, that team's good enough to win with Jalen or Tyler or Dylan or Tyler Buckner. They're good enough to beat Middle Tennessee State. So that's not really the test. They're trying to get them ready for Texas, the SEC, and all that. So I have to think you see multiple guys. I think you see Jalen in there. You work your second-team guy in, and that might be the biggest question right now. Who's the guy that's going to be contending with Jalen? I think it's Simpson personally, but I think Tyler Buckner's got a little bit of favoritism going this week. There's been a lot of talk about him, and again, Tommy Rees is very familiar with him. So I think that might be the biggest race we're looking at right now.
Well, it is one of those things that they don't have to make that decision. But yes, when they get to Texas, they probably need to know, because of the way the schedule is set up. They've got the strange game at UCF or USF. That it's one of those, how did this game get scheduled games? But after that they've got to have their guy probably.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to, there's no real benefit to tipping Texas who they're going to be able to plan for. So there's no real, and if you do tip, you don't want to tip before Middle Tennessee State, right? You want to keep this going as long as you can, keep it hidden as long as you can, and then, let Texas scramble from there. But not entirely different kind of athletes. I mean, obviously, if you're playing for Jalen Milroe, I think you're going to go stop the run first would be my guess. With Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner, it's going to be a little bit of a different game plan.
So one other note your guy Clint Lamb had about the scrimmage that I found interesting is that Caden Proctor was in there at left tackle and pretty much the whole time at left tackle. This is a true freshman from Iowa. Is he going to be that guy? Is that right now going to be, day one left
I
tackle?
think so. I think you look at it. Certainly, he has the talent. He meets those guys that we've seen in the past, that number one offensive tackle in the country that's come in and done really well at Alabama. I mean, obviously, he's a physical freak. I think the biggest question was he's coming from a smaller high school state in Iowa where he literally just bullied anybody on the field. But, I mean, you got him at left tackle. He's started both scrimmages there. And you see Booker. This is what sells me the most. You see Booker at left guard. That's providing him a little extra protection, a little bit, a safety valve because you've got a proven early draft pick over there helping him out.
Well, trying to think of it, was Robinson Cam Robinson the last true freshman to start at left tackle for Alabama?
I'm not the biggest historian. I feel like it was. Most tend to end up start at right tackle and then move to left.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Andre Smith was one. Cam was two that came right in and did it. I think that is it, though.
Yeah, it's been
usually it started right and
kind of move over. Yeah,
especially when you got a guy like Latham. You got a guy that's feasibly is going to be an early pick and could flip over there to the left. But I will say Proctor, he was the left tackle. Everybody I talked to, the college coaches, NFL scouts I showed him video to, they all said he's a pure left tackle. Not really a guy they even mentioned on the right side of the ball.
It is interesting because it feels like more often now it's just what side are you most comfortable on? Jake Rowe and I talked about that with the guys at Georgia. Same thing. You go back to Darnell Wright at Tennessee last year. They had tried him at left. It wasn't great. And not last year, but before that. And they realized he's a great right tackle. Let's just let him be a great right. So maybe Caden Proctor, they thought, well, okay, we can bring him on the right. But why? If he's really good on the left and JC's good on the right, look, why change anything?
I agree with that. I think, obviously left tackle is a big deal because of the blind side and all that stuff. But NFL, in the college, they're rushing you from both sides. I mean, we saw Anderson on the left side of the field going against a right tackle all the time. So that guy's got to be good. We've seen a lot of quality defensive ends over there. So it's not like just because you're staring at them blitzing don't mean you're any safer than if you're on your blind side. I mean, that guy's coming to kill you. He's coming to kill you.
And also, I'm not – saying this forecast Jalen Milroe is the starter or anything, but quarterbacks just run more period now. And so I don't know that blindside designation is that big of a deal anymore because a lot of times the quarterbacks are on the run or they're in some sort of RPO situation where they could be handing off or could be keeping.
And even though you got Simpson and Buckner, and both of those guys are pretty athletic, they can move the chains with their feet, pull it down and be evasive. It's like Mac Jones. You don't have to be a 4.4 Michael Vick. Mm-hmm. Mac Jones was slow as crap, but he was a maestro, with his feet. I mean, he was like Fred Astaire in the pocket. He always cleared space. Avoiding that rush is just as important, buying that extra second to get that pass off.
Yeah, it feels different. It does feel like this is not necessarily like the A.J. McCarron era of Alabama football. All three of those guys that we're talking about with potential to get that starting job can run if they need to.
Oh, absolutely. There's guys, I mean, if you can see that right end coming around, they're going to be able to tuck it and run, sidestep him, move to the right. And a lot of times guys, quarterbacks, right-handed quarterbacks are stronger moving to their right. They're more used to it anyway. So I don't think that's much of a problem for any of these three guys. They're not stiffs. They're not just sitting. You throw Dylan in there too. He's a big kid that can move. And Eli's a monster. He's got like that Jake Coker size.
Yeah.
He can run a little bit too. So there's nobody sitting back there like a statue.
Yeah, this first-year quarterback thing, the Jake Coker thing is what keeps coming back to me. I keep thinking about how many guys they had in that competition in 2015, how many people could legitimately maybe have wound up starting, and they still won a national title. I don't know that Alabama is as loaded everywhere else as they were back then, but how close are they to being that kind of loaded?
Yeah, one thing that Jake that always stood out to me is the leader he was. You know what I mean? If they were still doing the Oklahoma drill, he'd have got in there and did it. That kid, he's big. I speak at the Mobile Red Elephant Club. I'm telling you, this guy is a monster. He's the two guys, him and J.K. Scott, the punter, who I didn't know was 7'3" until I met him. I couldn't believe how tall J.K. was, but Jake Coker, that's a big man. You're wondering how those guys didn't bring him down near the goal line. You can see. So I do think they're going to need somebody to step up and take that leadership role. take that big hit, because they're not going to be as talented as Bryce Young or Tua, that kind of thing. They're going to have to be that leader, and Mac had that in him as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that with Coker, because they did try to go with the guy who probably had the better set of tools in Cooper Bateman in that Ole Miss game in 2015. They ended up putting Coker back in, and he almost led him back to win. But then that's what made them realize he was the guy.
Yeah, that is it. So that's going to be big for one of these guys to get that locker room, get them behind them, and just have that, have that confidence in your quarterback.
So what other position battles should we be aware of? Where are they still not quite set?
I'm still curious about wide receiver. I think they've got talented guys. I just can't believe the number of drops we're hearing about. I mean, it's really weird. It's not like there's one guy with bad hands who's dropping 4 passes. It's like 6 or 7 guys dropping 1, which is kind of surprising. So that guy that can hold on to the ball, sounds like Kobe Prentice had a really good day. That consistent guy, because if you look, every team, like, Bryce Young, everybody, Jameson Williams was a huge loss, no doubt, when he went down. But to me, Mechie was the biggest loss because he was his safety valve. He worked back to you. Who's coming back to the quarterback? Who's going to catch the ball in the crunch time? They need that guy. I still think Malik Benson's going to be a guy that steps up, coming from junior college, playing, scrimmaging, SEC's probably adjusting a little bit. That's one battle. Who's going to step up on the defensive line? I think we're all curious to see about that. Tim Keenan, all of a sudden, getting some start, getting some run, big plug of a nose guard. He's the guy to watch out for, but the defensive line to wide receivers, I think, is going to have to step up.
Well, it's going to be very interesting, and obviously all eyes on the quarterback, but if they feel good about the offensive line, I feel like that changes the dynamics of the quarterback situation too.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, first of all, they should be able to run the ball, which was, trouble. They ran the ball last year, but a lot of that was just Gibbs doing what Gibbs does. You know what I mean? He was just making special moves and beating people out in space. But I think you're going to have to be able to line up on 3rd and 3 and get 3 yards. You're going to have to fall forward and get those yards. When you know that, a little bit more confident. Alabama spent a lot of times passing on 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3 when they, that. And, of course, it's Bryce. He's fantastic. But that's not the most highest percentage chance to get a first down compared to a good, strong running game. I think they're going to have that this year. I think we'll have Jace who's going to move it. Roydell Williams got to start. I've had several people tell me he looked great. And, of course, Justice Haynes is the freshman everyone's talking about.
Cannot wait. It is going to be so much fun to actually see this on the field. And we are not far away right now, less than 2 weeks. Tim Watts from BamaOnline, thank you so much.
Anytime, Andy.